Am I the a-hole for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she excluded my children? I, 35 ma'am, have 2 kids, Oliver, 8M, and Sophia, 5F, with my ex-wife. I share custody of them, and we've worked hard to co-parent in a way that's supportive. For the kids, my sister Megan, 33F, recently got engaged to her fiancé Ryan, 34M, and they started planning their wedding. I was happy for them, and thought it would be a beautiful event. However, things started to go downhill after Megan sent out the wedding invitations. To my surprise, my children were not included on the guest list. Megan didn't mention anything about it when she sent the invites, so I had to ask her why. She explained that she wanted a small intimate wedding with only close adult friends and family, and that she didn't want to deal with kids at the event. She said she'd prefer if I came alone and left my kids at home because it would be more comfortable for everyone. I was taken aback by her response. I've always made it clear that my children are my priority, and I would never leave them behind for something like a wedding, especially when I share custody. They're not babies. They're well-behaved and are perfectly capable of attending a wedding without causing a scene. I asked Megan if she was excluding my children because she didn't want them there, and she said that it was more about the overall atmosphere she was aiming for and that she wasn't really close with the kids. This was a blow to me. I understood that weddings can be stressful to plan, but to exclude my children like this felt like a slap in the face. I explained to Megan that if my children weren't welcome, then I couldn't attend either. She seemed to take it personally and told me that I was being unreasonable, as it was her wedding, and she had the right to set the guest list how she wanted. She suggested that I could come to the wedding alone or with a date, but that she wasn't going to change her mind about the kids. I stood firm in my decision. I told Megan that family is important to me, and I can't support a wedding that doesn't consider my kids a part of it. She got upset and said I was making it all about me and my kids, and that I was ruining her special day by being difficult. My wife, who I remarried recently, sided with me, and she told Megan that it wasn't fair to exclude the children, especially when the wedding is supposed to be about family. Since then, Megan has been angry with me, and she's told me that if I'm going to act like this, I shouldn't come at all. I told her that if she can't see how hurtful this is, then I won't be attending. She's now told me that I'm causing drama and that I'm being a bad brother for not supporting her on her wedding day. She even went as far as to say that if I really cared about her, I would just show up without the kids and keep the peace. I've been feeling guilty about it, but I really don't think I can get past her exclusion of my kids. I don't want to make things worse, but I also feel like she's treating my family as second class. My other family members are divided. Some think I should just suck it up and go to the wedding, while others think I'm right for standing up for my kids. So am I the a-hole for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she excluded my children? Am I the a-hole for refusing to attend my best friend's wedding after she uninvited me over a petty argument? I, 29F, have been best friends with Carla, 30F, for over a decade. We met in college, and even though we've had our ups and downs, we've always been there for each other. We've been through breakups, family drama, job losses, and everything in between. Carla has always been like a sister to me, and I've always considered our friendship one of the most important relationships in my life. A few months ago, Carla got engaged to her boyfriend, Mark, 31M, who I actually really like. He's kind, funny, and treats her well. I was excited for her, and I immediately started helping her plan the wedding. I've been there for all the big decisions, from choosing the venue to picking out bridesmaid dresses. She even asked me to be her maid of honor, which meant the world to me. I've always taken that role very seriously because of how much Carla means to me. However, a few weeks ago, we had a small disagreement over something trivial, or at least I thought it was trivial at the time. We were discussing some of the details for the wedding, and I mentioned that I wasn't comfortable with the idea of a large guest list. Carla was planning to invite some distant relatives and friends of friends, and I just felt like it would be too much. I suggested that maybe we could keep the guest list smaller and more intimate, as it would be less stressful for everyone involved, including the couple. Carla completely flipped out. She started accusing me of being selfish and acting like it was my wedding instead of hers. She said I was trying to control her day and that I should just stay out of the planning process if I didn't agree with her choices. I was taken aback because it didn't seem like a big deal to me. It was just a suggestion, and I thought I was helping her think things through. But Carla got increasingly upset, saying that I didn't care about her wedding or what she wanted. She told me that it wasn't my place to comment on the guest list, and that I needed to respect her decisions. I tried to apologize, telling her that I didn't mean to upset her, but she wasn't having it. She told me I was being overbearing, and that I needed to back off. I wasn't going to push further, so I backed off and agreed to let her handle the guest list however she wanted. But then, the next day, I received a text from Carla that completely caught me off guard. She told me that she had thought about it overnight and had decided to uninvite me from being her maid of honor. She said that my behavior over the guest list argument showed her that I wasn't the right person for the role anymore. She said I was too controlling and that she didn't feel like I was respecting her boundaries. She also mentioned that if I couldn't handle her decisions for the wedding, then maybe I wasn't fit to be a part of the big day at all. I was absolutely devastated. I couldn't believe that Carla would uninvite me like that over something so small. I understood that we'd had a disagreement, but I never thought it would result in her cutting me out. I tried calling her to talk it out, but she refused to answer. I sent her a long message explaining how hurt I was, but she didn't respond to that either. The next day, Carla sent me a text saying that she was still going to invite me to the wedding, but only as a guest. She said she couldn't have me as the maid of honor anymore because of my attitude, but I could still come and celebrate with everyone else. That message completely shattered me. I felt like she was minimizing our friendship and throwing me aside over something that felt so insignificant in the grand scheme of things. I decided not to attend the wedding at all. I didn't feel comfortable going, knowing that she had basically told me I wasn't important enough to be a part of the day in the way I had always envisioned. I knew I would be hurt the whole time, and I didn't want to make the day awkward for her or myself. I sent Carla a final message, explaining that I wouldn't be attending the wedding because I didn't feel like it was right for me to be there, given everything that had happened. Carla hasn't spoken to me since then. She sent me a few angry texts calling me petty and accusing me of making everything about me. She said that I was acting like a spoiled child and that I was ruining her special day by not supporting her. Our mutual friends have weighed in, telling me that I'm in the wrong for not showing up and being there for Carla when she needed me most. I've been struggling with this whole situation because I feel like I did the right thing for myself, but I also feel incredibly guilty for not being there for her. I don't want to lose Carla, but I also can't pretend that everything is okay after she made me feel so unimportant. So, am I the a-hole for refusing to attend my best friend's wedding after she uninvited me over a petty argument? Am I the a-hole for telling my best friend she can't be my maid of honor because she refused to support my pregnancy? ENT28F have been best friends with Lily, ENT28F, since high school. We've always been inseparable, sharing everything from our secrets to our dreams. When I got engaged to my fiancé Ben, 30mm, I immediately asked Lily to be my maid of honor. She was overjoyed, and we started planning the wedding together. Everything was perfect until I found out I was pregnant. It wasn't planned, but Ben and I were both thrilled. We had talked about having kids eventually, and the timing, while unexpected, felt right. I shared the news with Lily as soon as I found out, and at first, she was excited for me. But then things started to take a weird turn. The first sign of trouble came when Lily started making comments about how the pregnancy would ruin everything for my wedding. She made remarks about how no one would want to go to a wedding with a pregnant bride, and how it might be embarrassing for me to walk down the aisle looking like I was already halfway through a pregnancy. I brushed it off at first, thinking it was just her being dramatic, but the comments kept coming. A few weeks later, Lily told me she didn't think it was a good idea to have the wedding so close to the baby's due date. She suggested that I move the wedding to a year later, or postpone it until I'm back to my pre-pregnancy body. She even told me that I should consider keeping the pregnancy a secret for the wedding, so I wouldn't ruin the pictures. I was shocked and hurt. This wasn't how I had imagined my best friend would react. I tried to have an open conversation with her. I told her that while I understood her concerns, I didn't want to postpone my wedding, and I didn't think it was a ruinous situation. I explained that I was still excited about getting married and having my best friend by my side. But Lily dismissed my feelings. She told me I was being too sensitive and that I was making everything about the baby. She said I should focus on the wedding and not let the pregnancy distract me. After that, things started to spiral. Lily became distant, and I could feel her resentment every time we talked about wedding planning. She stopped helping with anything, from picking out bridesmaid dresses to organizing the bachelorette party. I tried to reach out, but she kept making excuses about being busy or overwhelmed. Finally, I had enough. I called her and told her that I needed her to be supportive, especially during such a special time in my life. She responded by saying that she didn't sign up for a pregnant bride and that she didn't think she could be my maid of honor anymore. She said it was too much to handle and she wasn't comfortable with the idea of standing by me at the wedding. I was devastated. My best friend, the one person I thought would be there for me through everything, had just backed out of one of the most important roles in my life. I tried to talk it out with her, but it became clear that she wasn't going to change her mind. So after much thought, I made the decision to remove her from the role of maid of honor. I told her that while I still wanted her at the wedding as a guest, I couldn't have someone in my bridal party who wasn't supportive of me or my pregnancy. She was furious. She accused me of overreacting and not being understanding of how she felt. She said I was taking everything too personally and pushing her away. Now, I'm really torn. I love Lily, and I've been friends with her for so long, but I also feel like she's treating me like my pregnancy is some kind of inconvenience. I ended up asking my sister Emily, 24F, to be my maid of honor instead, and she's been amazing. But I still feel guilty. Some of our mutual friends say I'm in the right for standing up for myself, but others think I should have just let it go and tried to make things work with Lily. So am I the a-hole for telling my best friend she can't be my maid of honor because she refused to support my pregnancy? Am I the a-hole for not allowing my friend to stay at my house after she insulted my fiancé? I, 27F, am engaged to my fiancé Mark, 30mm, and we've been living together for 2 years. We've always had a good relationship, and I've always made it clear to my friends that I expect mutual respect between them and my partner. We don't have a lot of rules in our house, but I do believe in treating each other with kindness and understanding. One of my best friends, Jessica, 28F, has known me since high school. We've always had a really close bond, but over the years I've noticed that she can sometimes be a little blunt. She's often sarcastic and has a tendency to make jokes that can come off as hurtful, even though she insists she's just teasing. Mark and I have had a few awkward moments with Jessica in the past, where her jokes have made me uncomfortable, but I've always chalked it up to her sense of humor. Recently, Jessica had some issues with her apartment and needed a place to stay temporarily. I offered for her to stay at our house for a few days until she got things sorted out. Mark and I both agreed that it wouldn't be an issue, and we were happy to help. However, I didn't expect things to escalate the way they did. On her first night staying with us, Jessica was making some comments about how she thought Mark and I had a boring relationship. She said we seemed too perfect and that we were like robots when it came to how we interacted with each other. I was a little surprised, but I didn't want to make a scene, so I brushed it off. Mark didn't say anything, but he seemed uncomfortable with the comment. The next day, Jessica started talking about how she felt like Mark was too serious and that he needed to lighten up a bit. She then asked if she could borrow one of Mark's shirts to sleep in, because she said she needed something to wear. Mark, being the easygoing guy that he is, said sure, but I could tell he wasn't entirely comfortable with it. I was about to say something when Jessica dropped a bombshell. She said, "Honestly, I think it's funny how you two are so different. You're so uptight, Mark. No wonder she's going to marry you. You're like the perfect safe choice. It's kind of sad, actually." I was absolutely floored by this comment. I've never once heard Jessica speak about Mark like that, and I immediately felt the need to defend him. I told Jessica that her comments weren't funny, and that she needed to be more respectful, especially when she was staying in our home. She laughed it off, saying I was overreacting, and that she was just joking. But I could see the hurt in Mark's face, and I didn't want to let it slide. That night I had a long conversation with Mark about how I was feeling. He told me that he was hurt by Jessica's comments, but didn't want to make a big deal out of it because he didn't want to cause tension. He said that I should talk to her about it, and that maybe she just didn't realize how her words affected him. The next morning, I decided to speak to Jessica. I told her that I wasn't okay with the way she spoke to Mark, and that her comments were hurtful. I explained that while I understood her sense of humor, there was a line that shouldn't be crossed when it came to making jokes about my fiancé. Jessica immediately became defensive. She told me that I was being too sensitive and that she was just teasing Mark because I was obviously in love with him. She also said that if I didn't see the humor in it, then I was being a bad friend. At that point, I told Jessica that I didn't think it was appropriate for her to stay in our house anymore. I told her she could figure out another place to stay because I didn't want any more tension between her and Mark, especially after what had happened. Jessica was shocked and asked me if I was really going to kick her out over some harmless jokes. I told her that it wasn't about the jokes but the lack of respect she was showing Mark. Jessica called me overdramatic and said I was choosing Mark over her, and that if I couldn't accept her sense of humor, then maybe we shouldn't be friends anymore. I told her I still valued our friendship, but I couldn't continue to allow her to treat Mark poorly, especially when she was staying in our home. She left in a huff, and we haven't spoken much since. Now I feel guilty. I know that Jessica and I have been friends for years, and I hate that our relationship is strained. But at the same time, I feel like I'm in the right for defending Mark, especially since he's been nothing but kind to her. My other friends have said I did the right thing, but my sister thinks I overreacted and should have just let the comment slide. I'm conflicted because I don't want to lose Jessica, but I also can't let her disrespect Mark in my home. So, am I the a-hole for not allowing my friend to stay at my house after she insulted my fiancé? Am I the a-hole for refusing to pay for my daughter's wedding after she disinvited my sister, AITA 50M, have a daughter, Emma, 25F, who recently got engaged to her longtime boyfriend, James, 28M? I'm happy for them and was excited when they started planning their wedding. Emma has always been a bit of a perfectionist, and it's no surprise that she wanted her wedding to be perfect in every way. She came to me for help with the wedding budget, and I agreed to contribute a significant amount toward the event. Now here's where things get complicated. My sister, Marie, 48F, and I have always had a somewhat strained relationship. We've never been incredibly close, but we've managed to keep things civil for the sake of family. Marie has a tendency to be a bit blunt and outspoken, and she and Emma have clashed in the past. There were a few incidents where Emma felt hurt by some of Marie's comments, and they've never really gotten along. I didn't think much of it, just typical family tension that sometimes happens. A few weeks ago, Emma came to me looking upset. She told me that she had decided to disinvite Marie from the wedding because of some things that happened at a recent family gathering. Apparently, Marie had made a few passive-aggressive comments about Emma's wedding plans, implying that Emma was being too extra about everything and that the wedding was going to be a waste of money. Emma was clearly upset, and she said that she didn't want someone who was going to make her feel bad about her big day to be present. I was taken aback. While I can understand why Emma would be hurt by those comments, I also felt that disinviting Marie was an overreaction. Emma was asking me to back her decision, and I wasn't sure how to respond. I'm not close to Marie, but she's still my sister, and I've always tried to keep the peace between family members. I told Emma that maybe they could have a conversation and work things out. I suggested they clear the air and try to move forward. But Emma was adamant that she didn't want Marie at her wedding. After much back and forth, Emma said, "If you're going to make this about family loyalty, then I don't want you involved in the wedding anymore. If you won't back on this, I won't accept your financial help." I was shocked. I told her that I wasn't trying to take sides, but I wasn't comfortable paying for the wedding if she was going to go through with disinviting Marie. I explained that families should be able to work through their issues, and I didn't think cutting Marie out was the right approach. Emma got upset and told me that if I couldn't understand why she was doing this, then I shouldn't be involved at all. She said she didn't need my money if it came with conditions, and that I was being unfair by not supporting her decision. I was hurt by her words, but I stood my ground and told her that I wouldn't pay for the wedding if she disinvited Marie. Since then, there has been a lot of tension. Emma hasn't spoken to me much, and I'm not sure if we'll even be on good terms going forward. My wife is upset with me for not giving in to Emma, and she thinks I'm being too hard on our daughter. My friends have been divided as well. Some think I'm in the right, arguing that Emma needs to learn to deal with family conflict, and that I shouldn't enable her decision to disinvite Marie. Others think I should have just supported Emma, because it's her big day and she shouldn't have to deal with family drama. At this point, I'm feeling torn. I still believe families should stick together and that Emma is being unreasonable, but I also feel like I'm losing my daughter over this. So, am I the a-hole for refusing to pay for my daughter's wedding after she disinvited my sister? Am I the a-hole for kicking my brother out of my house after he ate my food and used my things without asking? So, a bit of background. I, 32M, live alone in a small house that I've worked really hard for. I have a steady job and no kids, so I've been able to afford some comforts that I really value, like a fully stocked fridge and a nice living space. I'm pretty particular about how I keep things, especially in my kitchen, because I like knowing exactly what I have and where it is. I'm not overly strict, but I do expect people to respect my space and my things when they visit. My brother Derek, 22, and I have always had a pretty good relationship. He's a bit more laid back than me, and sometimes he can be careless with things. He doesn't live too far away from me, but we don't see each other super often. A couple of weeks ago, he asked if he could crash at my place for a few days because he was having issues with his apartment and needed a place to stay temporarily. I said yes, no problem, he's family, and I didn't mind helping him out. Things started off fine. He's a bit messy, but I figured that was just part of living with someone who wasn't used to staying at someone else's house. I gave him a spare room, and we spent some time catching up. But after a few days, I started noticing some things that were really bothering me. First off, Derek started eating my food without asking. At first it was just a little bit, like grabbing a snack or a soda. But then it escalated. He ate the lunch I'd prepped for the week, took half of the expensive cheese I had in the fridge, and even finished off my favorite cereal without even leaving a single bowl for me. I confronted him about it, and he just shrugged it off and said, "It's just food, relax." I didn't want to make a big deal out of it, but it was starting to feel like he wasn't respecting my stuff. Then it got worse. Derek started using my personal things without asking. He borrowed my laptop to check his email, then left it on the kitchen counter overnight. He used my headphones without permission, and I found him using my personal skincare products that I keep in my bathroom. I understand that I've got a lot of nice things, but it just felt like he was taking advantage of my generosity. One morning, I woke up to find my brand new coffee machine, something I had saved up for, completely ruined. Derek had tried to make a pot of coffee, but he didn't clean it properly afterward, and the machine was clogged and leaking everywhere. I was furious. I asked him what happened, and he said, "I wasn't sure how to use it, so I just tried." He didn't apologize, and it seemed like he didn't care that he'd ruined something I had worked hard for. At this point, I had had enough. I told Derek that he needed to leave. He was shocked and asked why. I explained that I wasn't comfortable with the way he was treating my space, eating my food without asking, and using my things without any regard for my boundaries. He tried to argue that I was being petty and that he was just trying to survive while dealing with his apartment issues, but I told him that he was an adult and needed to take responsibility for his actions. Derek left, but he wasn't happy about it. He sent me several angry messages saying that I was being unreasonable and that I was treating him like a stranger in my own home. Our parents have also weighed in, saying I overreacted and that I should have been more understanding about his situation. They think I should have been more patient and allowed him to stay longer, even though he was being disrespectful. Honestly, I still don't think I overreacted. I don't mind helping him out, but it felt like he was taking advantage of me, and I wasn't okay with the way he treated my things. He's a grown adult, and I feel like he should know better than to disregard my boundaries. So, am I the a-hole for kicking my brother out of my house after he ate my food and used my things without asking? Am I the a-hole for refusing to help my sister pay off her debt after she lied about how much she owed? 30. Have a younger sister, Lily, 27F, who I've always been very close to. Growing up, we had a pretty typical sibling relationship with some rivalry here and there, but as we got older, we became really good friends. I've always looked out for her, and I've always been the one she turned to when things weren't going well. She was the type to make impulsive decisions, which often led to her getting into some tough spots, but I always helped her out because she's my sister, and I love her. A few months ago, Lily called me in a panic, saying that she had gotten into some serious financial trouble. She told me that she had accumulated a large amount of credit card debt and owed about $15,000, which was a huge sum for her. She explained that she had been struggling to make ends meet and didn't know what to do. She said that her rent was piling up, she had maxed out her credit cards, and she had started getting threatening calls from creditors. I was really worried about her, and after she reassured me that she was trying to get things under control, I decided to help. I agreed to give her $5,000 to help cover some of her bills and to buy her some time to figure things out. She promised that she would pay me back as soon as she could, and I trusted her. We agreed that I would transfer the money, and she would set up a plan to pay me back in installments. I felt good about helping her, even though it was a significant amount of money for me to give, but I thought it was worth it to help my sister out of a tough situation. However, a few weeks later, Lily started acting really distant. She would text me less and take longer to respond, and whenever I tried to check in about the money I gave her, she would brush me off. I tried to stay patient, but it was starting to feel like I was being ignored. After a month passed with no update from Lily, I decided to ask her again about the money. This time she seemed evasive. She mentioned that she hadn't been able to find a steady job yet, and that she was still working on sorting out her finances. I offered to help her, find a financial advisor or suggest ways to get out of debt, but she declined, saying she was working on it herself. A couple of weeks later, I got a call from her saying that things had gotten worse. She was crying and told me that her debt had grown even higher and that she was now in a crisis situation. She claimed that she had been spending more money than she realized on essentials, and that she now owed close to $30,000 in total. At this point, I was starting to feel uneasy. The number had nearly doubled from what she had originally told me, and I couldn't understand how things had gotten so bad. I offered to help her again, but I made it clear that I couldn't give her another large sum of money. I told her I would help her look into options for consolidating her debt, but I couldn't just hand over more money without understanding where it was all going. She got angry and accused me of not caring and being unsupportive. She said I was judging her and not understanding how hard things were for her. She then dropped another bombshell. She admitted that she had lied to me about how much debt she was in when I first helped her. Apparently, she had been hiding the real amount of debt from me and had been using my $5,000 to cover up for her own spending mistakes. She said that the real amount of debt was much higher than what she originally told me and that she didn't know how to tell me the truth. I was beyond upset. I told her that I felt betrayed and that if she had been honest with me from the beginning, I would have understood and still helped her. But now, knowing that she had lied to me and was continuing to make poor financial choices without being open about it, I was angry. I told her that I couldn't keep bailing her out every time she made bad decisions and that it was time for her to take responsibility for her actions. Lily insisted that she had no other options and begged me to help her again. She said that she had learned her lesson and promised she would be more responsible from now on. She even said that if I didn't help her, she might lose her apartment and have to move back in with our parents, which would be an embarrassment for everyone involved. I told her I wasn't going to give her any more money, especially after the lies and the way she had been handling the situation. I said I would be happy to help her figure out a better plan, but that she needed to take the first steps on her own. I also told her that I couldn't keep enabling her behavior, and that if she didn't change her habits, she would continue to get stuck in these cycles of debt. Lily hasn't spoken to me much since that conversation. She's been sending me passive-aggressive messages, accusing me of abandoning her when she needs me most. Our parents have also weighed in, saying that I'm being too harsh and that I should just help her again so that she doesn't have to go through such a tough time. They say that I'm being too tough on her and that families should stick together no matter what. Now I'm feeling torn. On one hand, I feel like I did the right thing by not enabling her and by demanding honesty and responsibility. On the other hand, I don't want to feel like the bad guy for not helping her, especially when she's my sister and she's going through such a tough time. So, am I the a-hole for refusing to help my sister pay off her debt after she lied about how much she owed? Am I the a-hole for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she invited my abusive ex? So, a little backstory here. I'm 31F, the older sister of Megan, 28F. We've always been close, or at least I thought we were, until this whole situation happened. I've always tried to support her even when we disagreed about certain things. I've been through a lot in my life, including an abusive relationship that I finally got out of when I was in my mid-20s. I'm not going to go into the details because they're personal, but I was emotionally and mentally manipulated by my ex, Tom 33M, for almost 4 years. The last year was particularly bad, and I had to go through therapy for months after I left him. It was a long, painful process, but I got through it. I met my now husband, Ethan, 34M, shortly after that, and we've been together for 5 years. We're very happy together, and I'm in a much better place. That's the backstory. Now here's where things start to go south. Megan got engaged last year to Jake, 30 May, who I absolutely love. He's kind, supportive, and respectful, and he's been amazing to Megan. We've all gotten along well, and I've been excited to help her plan her wedding, even though I knew it would be a bit of a logistical nightmare because of the family dynamics. Now, about 2 months ago, Megan told me that she had decided to invite Tom to her wedding. At first I thought I misheard her, so I asked her to repeat what she just said, and sure enough she confirmed it. I asked her why, and she said that Tom was family and had been a part of our lives for so long, and that it felt wrong to exclude him. She said she understood that I had some unresolved issues with him, but that he was a different person now, and that I should try to move on for the sake of the family. She even said, "It's just one day, and he won't even try to talk to you." I was speechless. I felt like the world had dropped out from under me. I had spent years healing from the trauma Tom caused me, and the thought of having to face him at my sister's wedding felt like a punch to the gut. I told Megan that there was no way I would attend the wedding if Tom was going to be there. I told her that his presence would ruin the entire day for me, and that I wasn't going to allow myself to be re-traumatized for the sake of her wedding. Megan got upset. She told me I was being petty and holding on to the past, and that I needed to grow up. She said that I was making her wedding about me, and that I was being selfish. I tried to explain that this wasn't about being petty. It was about my mental health. It wasn't just that I didn't want to see him. It was that seeing him would dredge up everything I had tried to move past. It was triggering, and it would have taken me right back to a place I'd fought so hard to leave. But Megan couldn't seem to understand. She told me that if I refused to come because of Tom, then she would have to reconsider my role in the wedding. She said that it wasn't fair to her or to Jake that I would let my personal issues get in the way of what was supposed to be one of the happiest days of her life. She said, "If you can't let it go, then maybe you shouldn't be in the wedding at all." At this point I was so hurt and frustrated that I told her I wouldn't attend, even if it meant losing my place as a maid of honor. I didn't want to have this argument, but I also couldn't pretend that it wouldn't affect me. The next few days were a blur of texts and phone calls, and each time Megan kept trying to convince me that I was being unreasonable. Her words were harsh. She accused me of ruining her wedding, and made me feel like I was the one in the wrong for putting my needs ahead of hers. She said that I was being selfish, and that it was just one day out of my life, and I shouldn't let my past control my future. I stuck to my decision, though, and refused to back down. The tension between us grew, and eventually I stopped responding to her messages because I was too hurt. I started feeling like she didn't truly understand me or respect my boundaries. A couple of weeks later, Megan reached out and said she had made a decision. She said, "I really want you at the wedding, but if you refuse to come because of Tom, then I will have to uninvite you as maid of honor. I can't have you making it all about you." I felt like I was in a lose-lose situation. If I went, I would be miserable and potentially relive years of trauma. If I didn't go, I'd lose the role I'd been looking forward to, and possibly even damage my relationship with my sister forever. Ultimately, I told her I wasn't going to attend. I needed to put myself first, and I couldn't face the idea of spending a whole day surrounded by people who knew what Tom had done to me, knowing he would be there, and nobody was willing to respect my wishes. I told Megan that I would support her and Jake from afar, and that I still loved her, but I couldn't be a part of the wedding if Tom was invited. Megan hasn't spoken to me much since then. She sent a few angry texts and called me selfish and toxic, saying I'm putting my past ahead of her happiness. My mom and some other family members have weighed in, saying I'm being overly dramatic and should just let it go for the sake of the family. But I can't let it go, and it's taking everything I have not to give in. I feel like I'm being torn between my own mental health and my relationship with my sister, and I don't know if I'm in the wrong here. I know that weddings are supposed to be a time for family, but am I the a-hole for refusing to attend my sister's wedding when she invited my abusive ex? Am I the a-hole for choosing my friends over my fiancé at my engagement party? I, 29F, have been with my fiancé Daniel, 31M, for 5 years. We met in college and have been inseparable ever since. When we got engaged last year, it was supposed to be a joyous occasion. But I'm honestly struggling with some of the things that happened at my engagement party, and am now questioning if I overreacted. To give you some background, I have a group of really close friends that I've known since high school. They're a mix of people from different phases of my life, but we've been through thick and thin together. Some of them have even been in my life longer than Daniel has, and I can't imagine my life without them. The issue is that Daniel isn't as close to them as I am to him. While he gets along with them, he's never been super comfortable with them or invested in building strong relationships with them. So, for our engagement party, I invited both my side of the family and my closest friends. Daniel insisted that his family should be the main focus, which I understood. But when it came to the actual planning of the party, I took the lead, as I really wanted it to reflect us as a couple. I asked Daniel to help with some of the decisions, but he was always too busy, and he didn't show much interest in the details. This frustrated me a little, but I chalked it up to stress from work and the wedding planning. When the day of the engagement party arrived, everything was set. The venue was a nice local restaurant with a small private room that felt intimate, but still spacious enough for everyone. I spent weeks helping to design the party's layout, the guest list and the music playlist. I knew it was going to be special because it would bring together people I truly loved and cared about. Daniel didn't put as much effort into the planning, but I didn't mind. I told myself it was fine because I had it under control. The party started off fine. My friends were having a great time, and I was chatting with everyone, catching up with people I hadn't seen in a while. Everything was going well, but then something happened that really set me off. About 2 hours into the party, I noticed that Daniel was acting distant. He was sitting with his family at the other end of the room, barely interacting with anyone else. Whenever I went over to check on him, he seemed preoccupied, and when I tried to talk to him about something, he seemed disengaged. I felt frustrated, but decided to just enjoy the party and not let it ruin the mood. That was until my friend Sarah, 30F, who I'd been friends with for over 15 years, came over to me and asked if we could talk in private. Sarah and I have always had a close bond, and she's been a huge part of my life. I figured she just wanted to chat, so we stepped outside for a moment. That's when she told me that Daniel had been making some offhand comments about my friends that didn't sit well with her. Apparently, while I was mingling with the other guests, Daniel had been talking to some of my friends and making snide remarks about how they were too wild or too immature for an event like this. Sarah was visibly upset when she told me this, and I was shocked. I knew Daniel wasn't particularly close to my friends, but I had no idea he felt this way. She said he'd even told her that it was weird how close I was with them and that I needed to pick my priorities. I was furious. I didn't know how to process it, but I knew I couldn't let this slide. Sarah reassured me that I didn't have to do anything right away, but she urged me to talk to Daniel because she thought I deserved better than that. I took a deep breath and tried to calm myself down before going back inside. When I approached Daniel, he was sitting with his mom and a few of his relatives, and I could see that he wasn't paying much attention to what was happening around him. I didn't care at that point. I was upset, and I needed to confront him. Pulled him aside, away from his family, and asked him why he'd been making those comments about my friends. He looked surprised and defensively said, "I wasn't making fun of them, I just think they're a little chaotic. I want this engagement to feel more like a formal celebration, not some wild party. And honestly, some of them don't even look like they're serious about the event." I felt my blood boiling. "So now you're telling me that the people I love and care about aren't good enough for this occasion? That because they're not as polished as your family, they don't deserve to be here?" I said, my voice shaking with frustration. He didn't seem to get why I was so upset. "I didn't mean it like that. I just thought the party could be a little more mature. I'm just saying we should set the tone for our future, and that means not hanging out with people who don't understand that." At that moment I snapped. I told him that he needed to go back to his family and that I didn't want to continue talking about this. I felt like my whole sense of self was being undermined. These friends of mine had been with me through everything, and Daniel was essentially telling me that I had to choose between him and them. I went back to the party and continued to talk to my friends, but things were strained. I felt hurt, but I didn't want to let the drama ruin the night completely. But then, as the evening wore on, I realized that Daniel was avoiding me more and more. He wasn't talking to me, and every time I tried to approach him, he'd brush me off and make excuses. At some point, after one too many uncomfortable interactions, I lost it. I told my friends I needed a moment, and I went to find Daniel. I found him in the bathroom and I told him that I needed him to leave. I couldn't believe I was saying it, but I felt like my heart was breaking, and I couldn't pretend everything was fine. I told him that he was acting disrespectful to my friends and to me, and I wasn't going to put up with it. He was completely blindsided. "What are you talking about? This is our engagement party and you're kicking me out." Told him yes, because I needed him to realize how deeply hurt I was. I went back to my friends and told them what happened, and they were understanding but also a little shocked. The night ended awkwardly, and I went home alone. Daniel stayed with his family, and we haven't really spoken since. It's been 2 weeks now, and Daniel has apologized profusely, but I still feel conflicted. I love him, and I want to marry him, but I'm not sure if I can ever feel fully supported by him after how he treated my friends. I feel like I'm caught between my loyalty to him and my loyalty to my friends. I'm not sure if I overreacted, but I don't feel like I should have to choose between the two. So, am I the a-hole for choosing my friends over my fiancé at my engagement party? Am I the a-hole for getting angry when my wife gave my inheritance to her sister without telling me? So I, 33 Frame, have been married to my wife Jenna, 30F, for 6 years. We have a pretty solid marriage overall, with only minor arguments here and there. But this issue has been eating at me for weeks, and I feel like it could potentially change things between us. Let me start from the beginning. I come from a fairly wealthy family. My father, 68, passed away last year, and when he did, he left me an inheritance that included a substantial sum of money, as well as a couple of properties. My relationship with my dad was complicated. We were close when I was younger, but over the years we drifted apart. Despite this, I still respected him and didn't want to appear ungrateful for the inheritance. It was a pretty significant amount of money, around $500,000, plus a couple of properties that are estimated to be worth around $1.2 million combined. When I received the inheritance, I knew I had to be responsible with it. I spoke to Jenna about how we should handle it, and we agreed to put the money into a high-interest savings account and invest some of it, but we wouldn't go crazy with spending. As for the properties, I decided that it made more sense to rent them out, and the income would be put into a separate account to grow for our future. Jenna was on board with the plan, and we agreed that it would help set us up for financial security down the road. Here's where things took a turn. A couple of months ago, my wife came to me with some urgent news. She told me that her sister Rachel, 28F, was in a terrible financial situation. Rachel had always been a bit irresponsible with money. She never had a steady job, spent her money recklessly, and always seemed to be in debt. According to Jenna, Rachel was on the verge of losing her apartment and was in desperate need of help. Jenna said she felt awful for her sister and that she wanted to do something to help. At first I was sympathetic, and I agreed that if Rachel was really in trouble, we should consider helping her out. But then Jenna hit me with the bombshell. She wanted to give Rachel $50,000 from my inheritance. I was stunned. I didn't know how to respond. I looked at her and asked her, "You want to give $50,000 of my dad's inheritance to Rachel, without even consulting me first?" Jenna was taken aback. "It's not like that," she said. "Rachel needs it. She's struggling and I don't know what else to do. We have the money and it's just sitting there. We could give it to her to help her get back on her feet." I immediately felt uncomfortable. While I do care about Rachel, I didn't think it was appropriate to give away that much money from the inheritance without discussing it first. We had made clear plans for the inheritance, and it wasn't just sitting there. It was being invested for our future. $50,000 was a huge chunk of that, and I didn't want to hand it out just because Rachel had dug herself into a hole. I told Jenna that I didn't feel comfortable with the idea. I said that I wasn't against helping Rachel, but I wanted to make sure we were doing it in a way that wouldn't jeopardize our future. I suggested that we could loan Rachel the money, but with a formal agreement that she would pay it back within a reasonable time frame. I also suggested that we could help her find a financial planner, or even help her with budgeting lessons, to ensure that this didn't become a pattern of relying on others to bail her out. Jenna didn't like that idea at all. She said I was being cold and unsympathetic toward her sister. She insisted that Rachel needed the money right away, and that it wasn't the time for formalities or business deals. I told her that I just wanted to make sure we were making the right decision and that $50,000 wasn't something we could just give away without considering the consequences. Well, Jenna went ahead and gave Rachel the $50,000 anyway. She didn't tell me beforehand, and I found out a few days later when Rachel came over to thank us for the generous gift. At that moment, I lost it. I confronted Jenna right then and there. You gave my inheritance to your sister without even telling me, without discussing it with me first. She was defensive, saying that she had no choice and that Rachel was in desperate need. I was furious. Not only had she gone behind my back, but she had also made a decision that would affect both of us without consulting me. It felt like a massive betrayal, and I told her that. She cried and said I was being too harsh and that I wasn't understanding how difficult this was for her sister. I told her that I understood Rachel's situation, but that we had plans for that money, and I couldn't just hand it out to people who couldn't manage their finances. Jenna argued that I was being selfish, and that the money was just money, and that helping family was more important. She said that she'd always been there for me when I needed support, and that I needed to be there for her sister. Since then, things have been really tense between us. We've barely spoken about it, but the resentment is palpable. I still feel angry about her decision, and Jenna feels like I'm being unreasonable. She keeps saying that I don't care about her family, and that I'm prioritizing a bunch of money over her sister's well-being. I've asked her multiple times why she didn't consult me before making the decision, and she says she was just trying to do what she thought was right. I haven't been able to move past it, and I keep wondering if I'm the one being unreasonable here. I don't think I overreacted. I feel like I have a right to be upset when it comes to something as important as an inheritance, but Jenna's emotional reaction has made me question whether I'm just being selfish. So, am I the a-hole for getting angry when my wife gave my inheritance to her sister without telling me? Am I the a-hole for cutting my mother out of my life after she betrayed me for my sister? I, 31 and never thought I would ever get to this point with my family, but here I am, questioning whether I made the right decision. This story is a bit long, but I need to explain everything in full to understand where I'm coming from. Growing up, I was always the good child. I was the one who followed the rules, kept my grades up, and tried my best to make my parents proud. My younger sister, Emily, 28F, was the opposite. She was rebellious, frequently got into trouble, and seemed to have a knack for getting out of sticky situations without much consequence. I often felt like my parents treated me like the responsible one, while Emily could get away with anything, because she was the free spirit who needed more understanding. But it wasn't just the sibling dynamic that was off. My mother, Sarah, 53, always had a strange relationship with me. I could never quite put my finger on it, but there was something different about the way she treated me compared to Emily. My mother never seemed to appreciate my efforts, even when I did everything by the book. If I got an A on a test, it was expected. If I helped around the house, I got a simple thank you at best. But when Emily did the bare minimum, my mother praised her to the skies. Still, I accepted it, figuring that maybe it was just my perception. Over time, I distanced myself emotionally from my mother, though I still did what I could to maintain a relationship. I moved away for college, and once I started working, I kept a respectful distance. I didn't need the constant comparison to Emily, and honestly, it felt like I was always playing second fiddle. But despite everything, I still made the effort, tried to be a good son, and kept in touch with my family. Things really began to unravel when I got engaged to my now fiancée, Megan, 30F, 2 years ago. Megan and I have been together for 5 years, and we're a great match. She's supportive, loving, and has been there for me through thick and thin. We were planning our wedding when Emily called me out of the blue. It was a Friday evening and I was busy working, but I picked up because I hadn't heard from her in months. She told me that she was in trouble. After a few minutes of cryptic comments, she confessed that she had gotten pregnant by a guy she was seeing casually. She said she wasn't sure what to do because he had disappeared and wasn't answering her calls. She didn't want to keep the baby, but she wasn't sure she could get an abortion, especially since our mother would disown her if she found out. She said she needed my help, and immediately I was concerned. I had no idea how to help, but I knew I had to be there for her. So I talked to Megan, and we agreed that we'd offer Emily a place to stay for a while, help her figure things out. Megan and I had some reservations about how things would go, but we tried to keep our home open. I told my mother about Emily's situation, and instead of offering support or sympathy, she immediately sided with Emily. She blamed me for not understanding what Emily was going through and said I should be more supportive. She also told me that I should leave the decisions to the family and that it was better for Emily to stay with them because they would know how to handle it. That was the first red flag. I didn't expect my mother to abandon her daughter like this, but I also didn't expect her to put me down in front of my fiancé and try to manipulate me into letting Emily stay with her. I felt completely unsupported, And when I expressed my concerns to my mother, she brushed me off, saying I was just being too logical and not understanding the emotional aspect of the situation. But things only escalated from there. Emily eventually came to stay with us, and over the course of a few weeks things got incredibly tense. She was distant, often angry at me for pushing her to make a decision about the pregnancy, and Megan started feeling more and more uncomfortable. Emily would snap at me whenever I asked how she was feeling, and she'd make passive-aggressive comments about my life choices, saying things like, "At least you've got your perfect little life," as if my success was somehow a reason for her failures. Then came the moment that shattered everything. One evening I was at work late when Megan called me. She was in tears, saying that Emily had been incredibly rude to her all day, saying she was too good for this family, and that Megan had no right to tell her what to do. Megan had tried to offer Emily some support, but Emily shot her down and then demanded that she leave the house. When I came home, the tension was unbearable. Emily had packed her things and was about to leave. But as she was walking out the door, she dropped a bombshell. She had been seeing someone else during the entire time she stayed with us, and she had planned to keep the baby, not because she was ready to be a mother, but because she didn't want to lose the last thing she had control over. That's when I realized how much manipulation had been going on, not just from her, but from my mother as well. I confronted my mother, asking why she hadn't said anything about the situation or offered real support. My mother dismissed my concerns and said that it wasn't my place to interfere in Emily's life. I told her that I couldn't continue being treated like I was invisible in this family, that I wasn't going to let her continually enable Emily's destructive behavior at the expense of my own mental health and my relationship with Megan, and then it hit me. My mother was just as toxic. She had always placed Emily above me no matter what. She had allowed Emily to manipulate and hurt me without ever intervening or acknowledging my feelings. She had always chosen Emily over me, and it had finally gone too far. I cut both my mother and my sister out of my life completely. I told my mother that I could no longer be a part of a family that didn't respect me and didn't value my relationship with Megan. I blocked both of them from social media and stopped responding to their calls and messages. Megan and I spent the next few months in peace with no drama, and I started to heal. But now I'm questioning if I did the right thing. My mother is trying to reach out, sending me texts and leaving voicemails, but I can't bring myself to respond. I feel like I made the right decision, but I also feel this deep sense of guilt. My mother has always been in my life, and despite everything, she's still my mom. But I can't keep letting her walk all over me. So, am I the a-hole for cutting my mother and sister out of my life after they continuously betrayed me? Am I the a-hole for telling my sister the truth about her fiancé, even though it could destroy their relationship? I, 30M, have been torn up for the past few months, and I don't know if I made the right decision. I feel guilty, but I also feel like I did what I had to do. I just don't know if I went too far. My sister, Kate, 28F, has been in a relationship with Tom, 33M, for about 3 years now. They've been living together for the last year, and they recently got engaged. I've always thought Tom was a great guy, charming, funny, and someone who seemed to genuinely love my sister. He was always polite to me and the family, and we got along well. I've never had any major issues with him, and I honestly thought they were a perfect match. But last year, something happened that changed everything for me. It was a night that I'll never forget. I was out at a bar with a few friends when I bumped into Tom. He was alone and a little drunk, but I didn't think much of it. We started talking, and I was surprised at how open he was with me. We talked about life, work, and of course Kate. He spoke so lovingly about her, but then something shifted. He started talking about how stressed he was about the wedding and how he was getting cold feet. I asked him what he meant, and he opened up in a way that I didn't expect. Tom confessed that he didn't think he was ready to marry Kate. He said that he had doubts about their future together. At first, I thought he was just going through some pre-wedding jitters, but then he started saying things that really disturbed me. He told me that he had been having second thoughts about their relationship for months. He didn't feel the same level of passion and connection that he once had with Kate, and he wasn't sure he even wanted to get married. I asked him why he was going through with it if he had doubts, and he said it was because he didn't want to disappoint Kate. He didn't want to hurt her or break her heart, and so he was just going along with everything to keep the peace. He said that he didn't know how to get out of it without causing drama, and that he was stuck. I was in shock. I didn't know how to process what I was hearing. Tom was practically admitting that he didn't love my sister the way she deserved to be loved. It wasn't just doubt, it was emotional detachment. He wasn't in love with her anymore, and he wasn't sure if he ever would be again. I tried to give him advice, but he wasn't really listening. I don't think he even wanted to break up with Kate, but he was too scared to hurt her feelings. At that moment, I didn't know what to do. I knew that Kate had no idea about any of this. She was planning the wedding, making future plans with Tom and trusting that everything was fine. How could I let her go through with this if her fiancé wasn't even sure he wanted to marry her? The next few days were a blur. I kept thinking about Tom's confession, about how deeply Kate loved him, and how much she deserved to be treated with respect. I wrestled with whether or not I should tell her. On one hand, I knew it would devastate her. On the other hand, I couldn't stand the thought of her marrying someone who didn't want to marry her. It felt like I was being forced to make an impossible choice. Either protect her from the truth and let her live in blissful ignorance, or rip apart her world and tell her that her fiancé wasn't sure about her anymore. In the end, I made the decision to tell her. One evening I sat down with Kate and tried to explain what happened. I told her everything but what Tom had said, his doubts, his fears, and his emotional distance. I told her that I loved her, and that I couldn't stand the thought of her marrying someone who wasn't all in, someone who wasn't sure if he wanted a future with her. I told her that she deserved to know the truth, even if it hurt. Kate was silent for a long time. Her face went pale, and I could see the shock and pain in her eyes. She didn't say anything at first, but then she asked me, "Are you sure? Are you sure he said all that?" I told her that I was absolutely sure, that I had no reason to lie to her, and that's when things started to unravel. Kate confronted Tom the next day. I didn't hear the whole conversation, but I could hear her crying, and I could hear Tom trying to defend himself. Apparently, Tom didn't deny anything. He didn't apologize either. He said that he was confused and didn't know how to handle the situation, but he still didn't want to lose Kate. He said he was just afraid, that he didn't want to hurt her, but he didn't know if he was ready for marriage. He didn't know if he loved her in the way she deserved. Kate was absolutely crushed. She called me later that evening, hysterical. She told me that she couldn't believe what I had done. She said I had destroyed everything. She said that I had ruined her chance at happiness, and that I was selfish for telling her the truth. She told me that if I hadn't said anything, she would have married Tom and been happy. Now everything was ruined. I tried to explain that I did it because I loved her, that I couldn't stand to see her marry someone who wasn't fully committed. But Kate didn't see it that way. She said I had betrayed her trust. She said that I should have stayed out of it, that I shouldn't have interfered in her relationship. She said I was wrong for not respecting her choice to marry Tom, even if he had doubts. She told me that I was the one who ruined everything. Since then, Kate hasn't spoken to me. I've tried to apologize, to explain my side of things, but she refuses to talk to me. She's broken off all contact, and it feels like I've lost my sister forever. I can't help but feel that maybe I did the right thing by exposing Tom, but at the same time, I feel horrible for what I've done to Kate. I don't want to be the reason she's in so much pain, but I also couldn't sit back and watch her marry someone who wasn't sure about her. So I'm left wondering, am I the a-hole for telling my sister the truth about her fiancé, even though it could destroy their relationship? Am I the a-hole for telling my best friend's wife the truth about his affair, even though it could ruin their family? I, 32M, have been wrestling with this decision for the past few months, and it's been eating me up inside. I don't know if I did the right thing, but at the same time I don't know how I could have kept this secret. Let me start by saying that my best friend, Ryan, 33M, and I have known each other since we were in kindergarten. We've been through everything together. Breakups, job changes, family issues, you name it. Ryan was more like a brother to me than a friend, and I always thought I knew everything about him. He's always been the guy who would drop everything to help someone, a genuinely good guy at heart. At least that's how I thought of him. Ryan is married to Megan, 30F, and they've been together for 6 years. They've got 2 kids, Zoe, 4F, and Max, 2M. From the outside, they seem like the perfect family. Beautiful house, well-behaved kids, and Ryan and Megan always looked so happy together. But over the last year, things have started to change. I noticed Ryan acting distant. He wasn't the same guy I used to hang out with. He stopped coming around as much, and when he did, he seemed distracted and irritable. He was always on his phone, texting or checking social media. It wasn't like him at all. At first, I chalked it up to stress at work or maybe the usual midlife crisis stuff, but then I started noticing that he'd act weird when Megan called, and he'd rush off after brief visits. It didn't sit right with me. One night we were out for drinks and Ryan got pretty drunk. He started talking about his marriage, and honestly, it sounded like he was trying to tell me something without directly saying it. He told me that he and Megan had been having issues for months, that they weren't connecting the way they used to. He said that the spark was gone, that he didn't feel in love with her anymore, but he was still trying to make it work for the kids. Then, out of nowhere, he admitted that he had been seeing someone else. I was in complete shock. Ryan, my best friend, the guy I considered a brother, had cheated on Megan. And not just once or twice, he had been seeing this other woman for nearly 6 months. I was disgusted, but I also didn't know what to do with this information. Ryan was obviously ashamed of what he had done, but at the same time it was clear he wasn't planning on telling Megan. He wasn't even sure if he wanted to stay with her anymore. I told him he had to come clean to Megan, that he couldn't keep living this lie. But Ryan said it wasn't that simple. He said he didn't want to hurt her or the kids. He said that he'd try to fix things with Megan, but that he didn't know if their marriage was even worth saving. The conversation ended awkwardly, and I left feeling conflicted. I didn't want to lose my best friend, but I also couldn't support what he was doing. Over the next few weeks, Ryan continued to pull away, and I continued to see him becoming more and more distant. His affair had taken over his life. One day I saw him leave work early and go to meet the other woman. I knew it was time for me to step in. I couldn't let Ryan destroy his family, especially when he had the chance to fix things. I started feeling this heavy weight on my chest. Megan had no idea what was going on. She had no idea that her husband was lying to her, deceiving her and stringing her along while she thought everything was fine. I started imagining how much it would hurt her when the truth came out, and I couldn't stand the thought of her being blindsided. I made the decision to tell Megan. I called her one afternoon while Ryan was out with the kids, and I asked if we could talk. She seemed confused but agreed, and we met at a coffee shop. I didn't want to do this over the phone or in a way that felt too impersonal. I wanted her to hear it from me, and only me. When we sat down, I didn't waste any time. I told her everything, that Ryan had been having an affair, that it had been going on for months and that he had no intention of telling her. I told her that I didn't know why Ryan had been so dishonest, but I couldn't keep this secret anymore. I told her that I loved her like a sister, and that she deserved to know the truth no matter how painful it would be. Megan went pale. She was silent for a long time, just staring at me with disbelief. She kept shaking her head, whispering, No, that's not true, that can't be true." She seemed like she was in shock, and I knew this wasn't easy for her to hear. I could see the tears welling up in her eyes, and my heart broke for her. I wanted to take everything back, but I knew I couldn't. After what felt like an eternity, Megan finally spoke. She said that she couldn't believe I had done this, that I'd gone behind Ryan's back and told her about his affair. She said that I was just as much of a traitor as he was, and that she didn't know if she could ever forgive me for ruining her family. She said I had no right to interfere in her marriage, that I should have stayed out of it. I tried to explain, and that I only did this because I cared about her, and couldn't watch her live a lie, but she wasn't hearing it. She told me that I had broken her trust, and she left the coffee shop without another word. I was devastated. I never thought she would react like this, but I also understood her pain. She had just learned that the person she loved and trusted had betrayed her, and I was the one who delivered the news. Since then, things have been terrible. Megan hasn't spoken to me, and Ryan hasn't either. I've reached out to both of them trying to explain that I only wanted to help, but they're both angry with me. Megan feels like I've ruined her life, and Ryan feels like I've betrayed him by exposing his secret. I'm caught in the middle, feeling like I've lost both of them, and I don't know if there's any way back. I'm struggling to figure out if I was right or wrong in telling Megan the truth. I know it hurt her, but I also know that she deserves to know. I can't live with the guilt of knowing about the affair and keeping it from her, but now I'm wondering if I should have just stayed out of it. Let them work things out on their own, and not interfered in something that wasn't my place to fix. So, am I the a-hole for telling my best friend's wife the truth about his affair, even though it could ruin their family? Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my sister-in-law move in with me after she caused major problems in my marriage? I, 34F, have been married to my husband, Jacob, 36M, for 8 years, and we have 2 young kids, Lily, 6F, and Ethan, 4M. We have a pretty solid relationship, even though there have been ups and downs like any marriage. Recently, though, things have been rough, and it's all because of Karen, 32F, my husband's sister. Let me give you some context. Karen is an extremely difficult person to deal with. She's always been somewhat spoiled and used to getting her way, but over the years her behavior has gotten worse. She constantly acts like she's the center of attention, and she's been a source of tension in our family for a long time. Every holiday gathering is filled with drama, and my husband and I have both had to confront her on multiple occasions over the years. But about a year ago, Karen's behavior started crossing a line. She lost her job due to poor performance. She's always had a somewhat unprofessional attitude, but this time it caught up to her, and she was unable to find another one. My in-laws, her parents, tried to help her out, but they weren't in a position to support her financially. Eventually, Karen started calling my husband every day, complaining about everything, asking for money, and complaining that no one was helping her. My husband, always the peacemaker, started giving her money here and there, which started to strain our budget. He'd tell me that he just couldn't stand hearing her cry on the phone and that he felt guilty for not helping her more. Fast forward a few months and things got worse. Karen's car broke down and she was stranded at her apartment. My husband and I were both exhausted with the constant calls, but he insisted we go pick her up and bring her to our house. I had no choice but to go along with it, even though I was already fed up with her behavior. We picked her up, and that's when things really started to fall apart. Karen moved into our guest room temporarily, with no clear timeline for when she was going to leave. At first I told myself it would only be a few weeks, but weeks turned into months. My husband continued to give her money when she needed it, and Karen became more and more demanding. She started acting entitled to everything in our house. She'd leave dirty dishes all over the kitchen, complain about the kids being loud, and even started criticizing the way I ran things in the house. She'd constantly make passive-aggressive comments about the way I was parenting my children, or the way I managed our finances. Every time I confronted her about her behavior, she'd act like the victim and claim that I didn't want her to get back on her feet, or that I was being too harsh. At the same time, she was creating tension between my husband and me. She'd often tell him that I wasn't being supportive enough, or that I was being unreasonable about how long she was staying. She'd make sure to drop little comments like, "I don't know how you deal with her," or, "I don't think she really wants to help you, Jacob. She just likes to control everything." It was like she was trying to turn him against me, and it worked for a little while. There was a specific incident that pushed me to the breaking point. One night, my husband and I were having an argument. We were fighting about finances, a common stressor due to Karen's ongoing stay and constant requests for money, and Karen overheard us. The next morning, she pulled me aside and said, "You know, if you really wanted to make things work with Jacob, you wouldn't make him feel guilty for helping his sister. He's just trying to be a good person, and you're making him feel bad about it." I snapped. I had reached my limit. I turned to her and said, "You have no right to come between us. You've been here for months using us, and I can't even have a conversation with my own husband without you getting involved. If you really want to help, then leave. You're destroying our marriage." That was a huge moment. Karen got upset, said I was being cruel and that I was ungrateful for everything she had done for us. She started crying and accused me of not supporting her. The problem was, my husband, instead of supporting me, sided with Karen. He said I was being too harsh and that she was just going through a tough time. He promised Karen that she could stay a little longer, which made me even more upset. I felt completely betrayed by my own husband. A few weeks later, I told Jacob that Karen had to leave. I couldn't live like this anymore. The stress of having her in our house, combined with the constant undermining of my authority as a wife and mother, was tearing me apart. I said, "If you want her to stay here, I'm going to need to leave. I can't do this anymore." Jacob seemed shocked and upset, but he promised he would talk to her. He said he understood how I felt, but that Karen didn't have anyone else to turn to. He told me I was being too harsh again, but I stood firm. I told him that if he couldn't set boundaries with his sister, then I would have to make a choice, and I wasn't going to stay in a home where I felt disrespected. Jacob had the conversation with Karen, and for the first time he stood up to her. He told her that she needed to find somewhere else to stay, because it wasn't healthy for anyone, and it was causing too much tension in our marriage. Karen was furious. She started calling me all sorts of names, telling me I was a terrible person for kicking her out when she had no place to go. She told me that I was ruining her life, and I should have supported her more. She even accused me of being jealous of her relationship with Jacob. She left a few days later, but the damage had been done. The tension between Jacob and me lingered. He kept saying that he was just trying to be a good brother, and that I should have been more patient. I feel like he didn't fully understand how deeply hurt I was by his lack of action until that point. I feel like I was forced to draw this line in the sand, because he was so unwilling to protect me from his sister. Now I'm wondering if I handled this all wrong. I know it wasn't ideal to ask Karen to leave, but I felt like I had no other choice. The emotional toll it was taking on me, my kids, and my marriage was unbearable, but at the same time, I don't want to be the villain in this situation, especially because my husband still feels like I could have been more understanding of Karen's situation. So am I the a-hole for refusing to let my sister-in-law move in with me after she caused major problems in my marriage?